Get talking on the issues that matter to you on 97.5 Kimmit FM's Talkback Show. 97.5 Kimmit FM. Kimmit FM. Kimmit FM.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Talkback Show with Kevin. Tonight, we'll be talking about Islam. We'll be exploring the world of Islam and looking at all the different elements that make up this religion. Last week, we spoke about religion. We were asking the question, are Christians and Muslims at war? Are the two religions at war? And we had a very interesting discussion. At the end of it, I realized that actually, a lot of us don't know much about Islam. We know about Islamic terrorists, but we don't know what the religion is all about. We've probably heard of Muhammad, but again, perhaps heard of him through controversy rather than as a man of God and a prophet. So we want to talk about Islam tonight on the Talkback Show, and I'm joined in the studio by Abu Ja'far al-Hanbali, and he's from the Karimid and Lotetri Institute. I hope I've pronounced that right, Abu Ja'far.
That's right. That's right. That's all right.
Welcome back to the Talkback Show.
Thank you.
Yes, you were here with us last week when we had a full studio. We had yourself, two Catholic priests,
Yes.
and a pastor from a black church. We also had Pittman Brown as well.
Yes.
And we had a very interesting discussion around Christianity and Islam. So again, this week we want to focus on Islam, and it's just me and you this time. So hopefully we should be able to cover quite a few things in the next 2 hours. I want to look at the origins and history of Islam. I want to talk about the different denominations, because a lot of people, especially since the Iraq War, have heard about Sunni Islams and Shiites without knowing what they are really. And I also want to talk about the different elements of Islam, the demographics, family life, the principles, the clergy, women in Islam. So there's quite a lot to get through. If you're listening to the show and you'd like to join in on the discussion, you can call us on 0115 9248672. That's 0115 9248672. You can text us on 80008, type Kemet, leave a space and type your message, or you can email us at studio at 975kemetfm.com. Remember, this is your Talkback Show, and we really like to hear from all our listeners out there. So make sure you get involved with your view.
Talkback Show. It's your Talkback Show, so get involved with your views.
Right, so Abu Ja'far, let's get straight in there in terms of Islam. Now, this is a sort of a monotheistic religion articulated by the Quran. In terms of the origins of Islam, a lot of people identify the Prophet Muhammad with Islam. Is that where it all started?
Alhamdulillah. It's correct from one standpoint, but it needs a bit of clarification from another. For Islam, when we're looking at Islam, the religion, we have to at least take some look at the Arabs. When the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, what in English is called Abraham, when he had his 13-year-old son, he was told to send him away, and this tallies with what we have in biblical accounts as well. When he sent Ishmael, or in Arabic Ismail, away, he sent him to an area which is Paran, which is where Mecca stands now, with his mother Hagar. Now he took a wife from those people, had 12 sons, we're all agreed on that, and from that lineage came the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He came from that lineage. So when we're looking at Mecca and those things to do with that, the Arabs are descendants of Abraham and Ishmael, whereas the Hebrews, the Jews, are descendants of Abraham and Isaac.
Oh, okay. So that's the breaking point.
That's the breaking point.
Okay.
So we would see as Muhammad as the ending in a long line of messengers that have come, some 124,000 in number. He is the cutoff point for prophecy and prophets.
Okay.
That's how we see it.
That's what you see. But so you guys believe in Adam, Abraham, Moses, and
That's
Jesus.
That's correct. We believe in, and most of the prophets that are mentioned in what Christians have in their Old Testament, we share the same thing in common. The names may be slightly different, like because they've been translated into English. So a Christian would say Jesus, we would say Isa. They would say Moses, we say Musa. They say Abraham, we say Ibrahim. They say Ishmael, we say Ismail. Isaac, we say Ishaq, right? These type of differences, but virtually they're going to be the same. Ezekiel, we say Dhul-Kifl. Jeremiah is Jeremiah. All these differences, you're going to find that the Arabic names are closer or almost identical with the Hebrew names.
Yes.
It's just the fact that it's come into English that there's been this discrepancy between the names.
Okay. But there is some similarity. But I mean, Muhammad started his life as a trader.
That's right.
And then became a sort of religious, political, and even military leader.
That's correct.
The Christians tend to view Jesus as the last prophet, in terms of the Son of God.
Sure.
Islam doesn't take that view. Why not?
Okay, there are a number of passages on why that's not the case. One of them is in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th surah, ayat 150 on, and in Surah Maryam, that whole surah deals with the issue of what we are to understand by the word Moshiach or Messiah or Messiah. Because when Christians hear the word Christ or Messiah, they immediately will come to understandings of divinity and Godhead, and they see his miracles as proof of his deity. Muslims uphold the same miraculous things, but Muslims see those miracles as proof of his being the Messiah and not deity. And Muslims will point to other examples where they see that the miracles that he does or did was done by other prophets. Like, for example, raising the dead was done by Elijah and Elisha and Muhammad and other prophets. The raising of the dead, the giving of giving the blind back their sight. Right? They cite other examples where other prophets did the same thing, and they say this is a testimony that he is a prophet. This is a testimony of who he is.
Yes.
And so that's why they.
So Islam sees Jesus as a prophet.
Yes, they see him as the Messiah. His actual title that is used in the Quran will be Al-Masih ibn Maryam, or the Messiah, son of Mary, or the Messiah, Jesus, the son of Mary. These titles are used for him. So we believe he's the Messiah. There's no dispute about that. His second coming is mentioned in Surah Al-Zukhruf, the 43rd surah, 61, that his second coming is a sign of the hour. So the Parousia, the second advent, the second coming, we share that in common.
But if he is seen as the Messiah, then why is it that Muhammad seems to take a greater position in the Muslim world than Jesus Christ?
Okay. The reason for that, why the Prophet Muhammad is seen differently than the Prophet Isa Islam, is because of how he's viewed. When you look in the Quran, Surah Al-Imran, the 3rd surah, 81, and Surah Al-Ahzab, the 33rd surah, 7, it's mentioned that all of the prophets before time, when they were all created, were hailing the messengership and the coming of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is believed by Muslims to be the first prophet created, but the last one sent. So he was created first before the rest of humanity and held back, kept in waiting. And then all of the prophecies in time through all the other messengers and prophets were foretold regarding him. And that is why he is given a higher rank, because he had the final revelation. Although he was the first prophet, he was the last one sent. He had the final revelation, the most wide-reaching revelation, because the other prophets were sent to their peoples. Moses was sent to the children of Israel. The Prophet Isa was sent to the children of Israel. The Prophet Abraham was sent to the people of Ur. And other prophets were sent to their people. But when he came, he made it clear in a number of occasions that he came to humanity as a whole. And when he sent letters to the different kings, he sent letters to kings in the Middle East, kings outside of the Middle East, and had couriers go and send them this message. So he made it very clear that he was coming not just in the capacity to the barefoot Bedouin Arabs that were in the desert, but to humanity as a whole.
But do you recognize other prophets and Christian prophets such as Paul, and those other?
Okay. Between the prophet, or between the Messiah and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we believe that there was a gap, because in a hadith in the collection of the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, between myself and the Prophet Isa alayhi salam, there was no prophet. So for 600 years there was a gap, similar to the Babylonian exile. There was a gap within prophecy. We believe that there was a 600-year gap. So we don't believe that there were prophets or messengers during that time, because that gap represented the Lord's judgment on humanity for their rebelliousness and sinfulness. And then finally that last prophet was sent.
Some people argue that before Muhammad came along, the Arabs were just nomadic people, believing in many religions, many gods. Polytheism was widespread. Is that necessarily true?
It's partially true. Here's the thing. Paganism crept into the Arabs. Perhaps about 2,500 years ago. It crept into the Arabs. And what happened is it involved a man by the name of Amr ibn Luhay going to Syria and coming back with the first idols that the Arabs had seen. Prior to that time, they had the same religion as Abraham and Ishmael. Once he brought that statue back, some of them began to venerate it, and idolatry spread among the Arabs. And this continued to be the case until the coming of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he wiped out those idols. So it's true from one standpoint that the Arabs in his time were paganistic, but that was not the nature of the Arabs for their whole 4,000-year history, because the Arabs are an ancient people. They've been around for 4,000 years. So that hasn't been their whole history.
But he sort of started the march towards Islam. It started with Prophet Muhammad. Okay. But initially when he was trying to convert people to Islam, he met upon a lot of resistance, didn't he?
That's correct.
It's almost a bit like the story of Jesus Christ. It wasn't accepted, and he had to actually move away from where he was to another city. I think the city of Medina.
That's right, Medina.
Yeah, and that's where I think it started to flourish.
Yeah, in the early stages when he was preaching to the people, there were only 500 Muslims in all of Mecca, out of a city of 12,000 people. They brought in things such as, they crucified some of his best friends. They murdered some of his best friends. They did a boycott in which they actually cut off food and supplies to the Muslims that were in Mecca. And his wife was one of the victims who starved to death because they were not able to access food. So he along with all the other people who believed in him, suffered greatly. So much so that some of his companions, his early disciples, cooked and ate the leather from the bottom of their shoes because they had nothing else to consume because of the persecution, and no one would sell them food or give them food.
This persecution sounds so similar to what the early Christians faced.
Yeah,
there's quite a lot of similarity there.
A lot of parallels.
Yes, lots of parallels. But nonetheless, he was able to actually unite most of the tribes of Arabia.
That's correct.
As a singular Arab Muslim religious community. Now, after his death, there was a bit of a civil war.
Yes.
When Muhammad died.
Yes.
In terms of who should lead.
That's correct.
Can you tell us a bit more about what happened after Muhammad passed away? By then, he had written the Quran, I assume.
Okay. What happened is the Quran was sent down by revelation. It was different to the revelation of the Torah. The Torah was sent 2 tablets at one time on Mount Sinai in one dispensation.
Yeah.
The Quran came down piecemeal in either a surah at a time or a chapter at a time, or a series of passages one at a time over 23 years. Now, when he would receive these revelations, he would tell, whether it was his wife or one of the 70 scribes that he had more than 70, but he had 70 main scribes who would write down these revelations, and he would indicate to them where each verse was to go. the year that he died, he received his final revelation.